Welcome to Moving Conversations, a podcast for movement professionals by movement professionals. If you coach, train, or teach movement, Pilates, or fitness, then this podcast is for you. With more than 60 years of experience in fitness and Pilates, your hosts, Brian Ritchie and Nora St. John, explore the science of human movement, diving deep into the facts, myths, and common misconceptions, hoping to spark thought and conversation about how we view fitness and movement. Now, let's jump into Moving Conversations. And welcome back to Moving Conversations. I'm Brian Ritchie. Joining me as always is Nora St. John, and we have a special guest.
We do, Miss Erika Quest from Level Up Movement. I'm going to do a quick introduction for those of you who don't know her. Erika and I have known each other for quite a while now, close to 15, 17 years, something like that. She's a balanced body educator. She is also really unique in that role in that she comes from a very strong fitness background and a strong marketing background. She was a corporate marketer for years, selling fast food products and I believe pet products as well, if I get that right. And then she got into fitness, and now she's been in the Pilates world. She's an international presenter. She's been somebody I have counted on for years to go into any situation and make up something fantastic and give people really what they need. So we're really happy to have her here. And the special topic today is active aging, gerontology, neuroaerobics. A lot of her specialty really is with the aging population. So welcome, Erika.
Oh, it's such a joy and an honor to be with the both of you, and a joy to be hearing your voices in my ears. And thank you for having me as your guest on Moving Conversations.
Ooh. So let's start a little bit with Erika. Why did you get into this whole field of working with seniors? Tell us a little bit about your why. Why are you doing what you do?
Well, it's a very good question. And actually, I'm delighted to bring it back all the way to childhood, because I believe that purpose runs deep and impressions run deep as you are imprinted as a child. And I will give credit where credit is due, which, since I'm speaking to my mentor, she always gets credit where credit is due in my life and my journey in education these days. So credit where credit is due is with my mom. And I remember as a very young child that my mother has a huge, huge spirit of service. And she's now 84 years young. And I was kind of toted around with her when I was a little girl, and maybe like she'd pick me up from preschool or kindergarten, and she would take me to, at the time they were called these old folks homes, where she was either volunteering or my uncle was living in one of them, I remember. And so she would bring her young daughter with her, and we would go and volunteer, or we would bring food, or we would sing songs, or just be companions to people that were living in assisted living facilities back then. And so that's my youngest memory of an imprint that I can remember being around older adults. And then that kind of translated just naturally into my probably late teens and early 20s, where I started to land a job at like the city community centers that were senior centers. And then I eventually got this very fancy title right before I went into corporate marketing, called the Director of Resident Services at a very high level, very bougie, if you will, like the Ritz-Carlton version of a senior living facility. And basically my title was to party plan for these people. So take them to the Getty Museum, do their current events, throw a happy hour party, bring in a concert for them. And so I've always had this undercurrent and this passion for the active aging population. And now it really resonates for me, having older adult parents and wanting them to really live well and grow old well and be able to perform their activities of daily life for as long as possible in their homes independently. And then I'm not going to lie, because I'm getting up there in years, I'm starting to think about myself too. So that's a little brief background of, I think, the why behind this audience and how it's just naturally resonated with me since a child.
Nice.
Love it.
Very cool. I love what you did for the community center. I mean, it's sort of like on the Love Boat, Julie, the cruise director.
I was full on cruise director, and it was so much fun.
It sounds like it. It sounds like a blast.
And the things you see in those environments is just hilarious too, like the dating relationships, and oh, it was great. It was a good time, but it was kind of the natural progression, I think, when I then, if you guys want me to continue that story and how it kind of like bridges over to fitness and Pilates, is when I was with the Bosu brand, as you guys know, for a very long time, I did all of the Pilates curriculum development for that brand back in like 2009-ish. And after that, I met a colleague of mine who you guys might know, Lawrence Viscontini, in the industry. And he did the level 1 mobility and stability for active aging for the Bosu. And I took that certification because it was near and dear to my heart, yes, but it was also what I was seeing in my studio that I had for 17 years in Laguna Beach, California. I was like, I need this. My clients need this. And so that really was the bridge to get me back in front of this audience. And then I started to do my own research, and I realized, oh my gosh, this population is massive and it's only getting bigger. And all the research that's been pumped into this audience demographic is exponential, especially since 2001 beyond, because there are so many strategies and unique things about this heterogeneous population that we can do as fitness and movement instructors to really impact 4 out of 5 of their ages, which that's super inspirational to me. So,
yeah, I mean, one of the things that certainly, Brian and I both been in the industry 30 years plus at this point, and just to see how much science has really caught up with what you need to do to age well. And man, movement is top on that list. Whenever they talk about preventing dementia, preventing falls, living longer, keeping yourself healthy, it's always about movement fundamentally. But that has really changed.
Yeah. How many times, I mean, I've said this, and I'm sure you guys have said this, we have 80-year-olds who act 40.
Yes.
And we also have like our 50-year-olds who act 80.
Yep.
And I think movement is really the through line with that. The ones who stay active longer through life and continue to move, they're the ones who act much younger. They want to stay active. They want to stay healthy. They're the ones that come to me mad that they're in pain because they're like, I want to keep doing this. I want to keep going. Whereas, the younger people, some of them at the point when they hit 60, it's like, all right, it's time to slow down now. And it's like, slow down. You ain't been moving yet.
Yeah, it's true. And the science really, does suggest that exercise, the best thing that we can do, or the number one best thing that we can do for our brain, especially as we age, is movement. And it really helps with mood, mindset, and angiogenesis, which is basically the formulation of new blood vessels. And those new blood vessels can even occur in adulthood. So the kind of old adage of the fact that like you can't teach an old dog new tricks is incorrect. And so I would like to say that, mood follows action, as Rich Roll coins it in his podcast. And so movement and mood go hand in hand. And as we see decline in and basically general oxidization of the brain and of the body, the more that we can focus on movement, not that sleep and diet don't have anything to do with this, because they most certainly do, but the more that we can focus on exercise to help with social aging and biological aging and physiological aging and psychological aging. Literally, exercise impacts 4 out of 5 of the agings, right? And that's an amazing, amazing thing if you think about it. And the brain can change and become more plastic no matter what age you're at, which is like super, super exciting.
One of the things, Erika, that I know we've talked occasionally about, and I've been really intrigued by, is this idea of kind of neuroaerobics, and that you don't just do, like with your seniors and your active agers, you don't just do movement, but you often really include a kind of a cognitive component or a memory component with it to try to get multiple things happening at the same time. I've been really intrigued by that, and not quite, like, what do you do? How does that work?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of things. There's a lot of research on brain games and applying brain games associated with movement. So the technical term, as I understand it, for neuroplasticity, neurogenesis, neuroaerobics, is that it is not your grandfather sitting on the couch and doing a crossword puzzle. While that is good, it is improving a specific task that they are doing at that given time. Should they stop doing it? Absolutely not. But what actually lights up the neural pathways in the brain centers more and can really help with creating more plasticity of the brain is applying movement to these brain strategies. And what's really cool about it is that we don't have to really do anything fancy. Like, you don't need to be doing a burpee while you're doing any of this stuff. Like, you can just be marching in place, and you can be, I don't know, like recounting a phone number, or you can be spelling colors or spelling words. And I've turned it into part of my practice, and I make it really fun for my clients. But what I will say is, on the neuroaerobics side, you want to be cautious about how much you put in your programming, because it can also be a bit on the frustrating side as well, like especially if you're just starting to introduce these types of strategies to your active agers. So, but yeah, there can be structural changes and volumetric changes in your brain from physical activity and exercise. You can increase your BDNF, your brain-derived neurotropic factor, and your molecular changes, and your neuronal changes through neurogenesis, all with applying many strategies that benefit the active aging population. And some of that comes through brain training.
Nice.
Very cool. So what I'm getting here, which is very cool, is you combine the physical, right? Doing a workout, like I'm thinking of in Pilates, footwork, with cognitive stuff, either memory or, again, spelling along with the movement. So you're getting multiple systems going. And just to back up a bit, so neuroplasticity is that ability of the brain to change and the nervous system to respond to new input and to make new pathways, to make new connections, which as we age gets more and more and more important, because a lot of times some of those pathways start to fade and dissolve, and that creates things like dementia and other kinds of, more serious issues. So you're really looking at trying to keep that brain active and then again combining it so that you're not just getting like proprioceptive feedback through the body and blood flow and that kind of thing, but you're also getting the cognitive piece with it. That's just like super cool.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where the brain actually thrives on stress. So it has to be stressed to a certain degree. Like, nobody's asking you to like jump off a cliff and spell a phone number at the same time. Like, that's a little bit too much.
Thank God.
But the brain actually, imagine like you're standing in your kitchen and somebody comes up behind you and surprises you. Like, that's also an example of the brain being like, whoa, like so you get a kind of like dopamine release and you get lit up. And so neuroplasticity and neuroaerobics can function in the same way. And so what I've done in my practice is I've tried to make it kind of simple. And that's what I teach, is the simplicity of this. I don't want it to be difficult to add in the neuroaerobics piece. And I also don't want it to be time consuming or frustrating to clients. So oftentimes what I will do, depending on who I'm seeing and who I'm working with, but let's keep this more focused in the Pilates environment. What I'll do is, if I'm just teaching a simple sequence that they've done a million different times with me, like let's think about the exercise punching, where you're standing at the tower. And for those of you who are listening that don't know what a tower is, just basically think that you're standing with either two hand weights or springs in your hand, and you're gonna punch your arms forward, right? And so that's an exercise that we learn fundamentally as we go through the Pilates process, called punching. And what I do to make it more neuroplasticity based is, once they've kind of mastered that punching exercise, I'll add the brain piece on. So I will start to do a call and repeat. I will ask them to say, Susie, punch right. So they'll have to use their right arm and punch. And then I'll say punch left. And then I will call each of them. And then I will graduate that into even more task complexity. As I see them getting better at that call and repeat, then I'll add in a foot. I will say, Susie, step left, punch right. And then they'll have to come back. And then I'll say, Susie, step right, punch left. So I have all these different variations where I'm using an exercise that is very much a great exercise. And then I've just taken the limbs and I've changed it into a more neuroplasticity experience, if that makes sense.
It's interesting. this I did just for variety's sake, and Nora and I have talked about this because I think she's done similar, is I have these colored dots that I'll put on the floor and have them almost do a little twister, balancing on one foot and reach out. Okay, red, red. They have to reach to red. Now blue, now it's behind them. Now it's, so that they really have to think, and it's not just, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, or if I'm doing the clock lunge, I'll say 4 o'clock, 11 o'clock. And it creates that sort of mindset that they're constantly sort of on guard. They have to be listening, and that active listening component, I think, is really key for that. But it sounds like they're also training parts of their brain that we really didn't realize we were training while we were doing, things that I just thought was fun.
It's a great way to also get people to be quiet in class settings.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. Yep.
Like if you want people to be quiet, you just start to pour in a little bit of like task work and brain work, and they're like, oh, I have to pay attention. But oftentimes what you see in a class setting, and the reason why I talked about neuroplasticity, is that when you start to pour in these more complex tasks for them, the tendency is that they will want to stop moving, right? They'll, even in a simple a bicep curl, they're going to be like 949, and you want them to keep moving through whatever task you're asking them to do. So, and then also, if I may add, there's also right brain, left brain, right? So as an example, with one of my clients, he was a retired CPA, and he had a traumatic brain injury. He came to me because he had been bucked off of a horse and was in a halo for about 7 weeks, and he was not able to pass the memory exam on his life insurance policy. And so his wife sent him my direction. And so I knew right away kind of what I was working with. And so we started to do phone number drills, right? So he would be doing like chest expansion or bicep curls, and he'd be like, oh, just recounting my phone number like nobody's business. No problem, because that's the side of his brain that he is so used to, right? He's used to being in those boardrooms and doing taxes, and he's a CPA. The minute that I started to tell him a story, and this is another tip or trick, I tell a lot of personal stories for also the social aging component, so that relatability component, that like, maybe I have a blue stand-up paddleboard and I'm out at San Onofre and I'm going to take my blue stand-up paddleboard out. Or, I never made him spell turquoise, but I would say, can you spell the word blue? And he would completely like he couldn't do it. So it's also a side of the brain. It's a right side, left side thing too, because there's obviously a more didactic, numbers related side, and then there's a more creative side of the brain. So you want to also play with both if you can and you're willing.
So I'll just step back a minute, because you talked about the 5 different aspects of aging. You kind of whipped them off. So let's just go back for a moment and then just like talk through those, because you said social aging.
Yeah, so so there's only one out of the 5 types of aging that cannot be changed. So I will name them. There's your chronological age.
Right.
There's no quiz, so we can just divulge. That's number one you can't change. Then there's your biological age, which is essentially what's going on inside your body from a cellular level. So like this would be, for instance, say you go to your doctor and you have your blood panel pulled, and oh my gosh, you are type 2 diabetic or pre-type 2 diabetic. And you didn't know it. So that would say that like maybe you're 65 years old, and your biological age is saying that you're 70 years old because of your blood panel. But that's not to scare anyone, because that can be changed, obviously, with exercise, with diet, and those kinds of things. There's also your psychological age, right? So this is oftentimes after people kind of like not let go, but they move out of their purpose, meaning they've been working their entire lives, and maybe they've been a high level executive. I've had many of these types of clients, and they lose their purpose. And so oftentimes what you'll see is if they're not hobby seeking, if they're not taking care of their body, this is where depression can start to come in, high levels of anxiety and mental health issues. And obviously movement and exercise can change that mood and that mindset. So there's chronological, there's biological, there's psychological, there's physiological, which is basically, how are they able to perform their activities of daily life when they wake up in the morning? Can they get up and perform all of them without assistance? Are they able to still get up and get down off of the floor? Do we need to focus on more lower body strength and power for them to help with that? Is sarcopenia present? Is osteoporosis present? This is when a lot of the conditions that we're dealing with will come in. And then there's our social age. And the social age is also really important because social aging really also impacts depression and interaction. And it really brings them back and us back to that sense of living life and community.
Cool. Thank you. That's good.
I find it interesting that you mentioned the psychological. Literally an hour and a half ago, I was speaking with one of my employees about this, that two of her people who have been with us a long time, we've known them for a number of years, and both of them, since they're retired, have become, and they love to travel and things, but one of them was super focused on work and everything, but now they become very scatterbrained,
Yes.
and, trailing off in the middle of a story and not completing the story, and just almost as though they can't stay task focused. So it's very interesting that you mentioned that part of it, because we do see it among retirees.
Yeah. And I think that also it's just the general nature of the oxidization of the body. I mean, people ask me like oftentimes, well, what do you do if they don't understand, or so you have to have also quite a bit of patience and also the ability to slow down. I spoke of this at a workshop I taught just recently, where oftentimes we are speaking too fast and our cadence needs to slow down, because so many things happen with this population. There is loss of hearing, there's loss of eyesight, there is heart issues, blood pressure issues, there's vertigo, there's all these things. And so they're also dealing with also potentially polypharmacy, which is where they're seeing maybe 4 doctors that are prescribing a variety of different medications. So on any given day, there could be a brain fog thing going on, and that could be impacting them too as well, Brian. It could be even outside of the mental health side of things. So.
Absolutely. You mentioned the slow down your speech. I want to ask you, this is something that I've noticed with some of my employees, and maybe you can help me work with them a little bit. How do you slow down the speech without sounding condescending? Sometimes when we have a tendency to slow down, it's almost as though we're talking, like me, I'm like talking to my kids, and you don't want to do that, because I actually had heard a client mention this to, me, and say, it sounds like, he's condescending me when he's talking to me. I'm like, okay, I'll take care of that, and I think he's just trying to, make sure she gets it.
Right. So I would say that maybe if it's not slowing down the speech, it's more of an economy of language opportunity there. So, sometimes I think, and again, this applies to all populations, not just active aging. This applies to us as just students of movement and motor learning in general. Oftentimes, we're trying to, as instructors, move them towards a level of performance, when in reality, they're in a phase of learning. And so it's okay for us to actually be a little bit more quiet and be like, okay, that's what's happening for today. They're moving well for today. They're being safe in that movement. Obviously, we want to make sure that we're as safe as possible. And they may not be performing that task as I had intended it, but we'll try it again in 2 days from now and see if my coaching, my cueing changes, and see if I can, bubble up something different to the nervous system for them. So patience comes up a lot for really all ages, because, we're the instructors. And I think oftentimes I have to remind myself that my clients are not coming in to perform the Pilates Olympics. They're not going for the gold, as Kara Reeser would say. She's the one that said that. She's like, you don't need to panic. Like, nobody's going for the gold right now. Like, just move your body and feel good about it. So
along with that too, I mean, I always feel like some of that is your intention. Right. It's like I can speak slowly because I teach a lot in translation and stuff. So I have to speak slowly for my translator, and I just speak more slowly. I don't speak like, and now I'm going to tell you what you need to do. Like there's an attitude that comes past that I think is more what your intention is than just the fact that you're speaking more slowly. One thing I wanted
100%.
to to ask, because I have a pair of older clients who actually you all know well. And it's interesting because I've been working with them on all these things. So we'll do simple things like stepping up onto a moon box or a small little step and then stepping over and doing various different patterns with that. And what's interesting is one of them has a hard time with just remembering like right foot, left foot, right foot. The other one has no problem. So I'm also really working on trying to keep both of them at their level, and they're not at the same level cognitively and also in terms of balance and stuff. So that's been interesting. It's like, okay, I'm going to have you do this and I'm going to have you do this. So I can't really cue them the same way. So it's just an interesting challenge with that.
Yeah, and I think that that's fine too, because when you're working, especially in a couple kind of a situation, I had a couple that trained with me for all 17 years that I had the studio, and they were very competitive with each other. So they actually did really well. But in situations where you have people that are kind of like, not like they're competitive, maybe not in a good way or a healthy way, you might need to break them apart and have them do different tasks. And or I would, if it were me, I'd probably turn it into more of a circuit where somebody was doing a particular exercise on one machine, somebody was doing another exercise on another machine. And what I would do is I would make each exercise different. So if it were me, I would have somebody maybe just doing a simple step tap on a BOSU or a dome compression to really get that tibialis anterior fired up for fall prevention. So I'd be working on fall prevention in one station, and maybe in the other station, I'd be working on neuroplasticity. So I could then stay away from the person that's doing the fall prevention exercise, because that's a pretty basic thing, just stepping on the dome.
You can leave them be.
And then, and then you could move over to the neuroplasticity side of things and work individually with that person. And then they get to swap. And then there's also not as much time paid attention to what the other person is doing. So they don't have that opportunity to like, oh, shoot, I'm doing it wrong. Because that's the other thing, is that really positivity is where it is all at. And I think it's just a general statement, but if you want people to learn on the motor learning continuum, and you want to move them into that kind of myelin wrapping of like doing their repetitions and heading towards performance and doing that task better, you want to focus on positivity, because dopamine has a big interaction with that.
That's really interesting, because
even when people are spelling my phone number out loud wrong, I'm like, good job.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because you listen to most personal trainers, and I come more from the fitness side. It's very much correction. You're correcting people what they're doing wrong. And over the years, I've gotten into more, that's gorgeous, beautiful, that's perfect. You know, even if they're only at 80%, if it's better than it used to be. So you give that positive reinforcement. But even when I hear the gym I go to, you know, on the weekends, I hear some of the trainers, and it's more not scolding, but definitely a correction. They only hear the negative. They're not being praised much on the positive. So I think it's so important for us to focus on the positivity. It's a great thing to
and
remind.
the research also does suggest when you're dealing with like, you know, a task learning continuum, that the more that you can focus on what they can do versus what they can't do, the better results you're going to get, and the better they're going to feel at their session and after their session, which, let's talk Erika's marketing brain for just a moment. The more that you can move them along the path to purchase to that loyalty level, the more they're going to keep giving you their credit card and sign up for the biggest package ever. And so if you can focus more on extrinsic cues, so cues that are more outside of the body, and intrinsic cues that are inside of the body, or a combination of both, and keep them positive and see what works for them, the better off you're going to be, versus like you're doing that wrong. Because what truly is wrong when you're dealing with asymmetrical humans and bodies that are all different shapes and sizes, as I see it.
Yeah, I love that.
Creating success, right? Success is what creates client loyalty. It's what makes them come back. And honestly, what makes them actually progress along the path. You know, and honestly, again, I've worked with every range of client, but certainly some of my younger, more competitive, like highly athletic clients, they need a little more like, no, do it this way, right? Because that's what they're looking for. They're actually looking for that little edge and that little specificity that's going to move them forward. For a whole lot of my older clients, it's like they just want to be comfortable in their bodies. They want to move better. They want to feel better, and that's all they need. They don't need to get that extra push, right? Because they're not, again,
Yeah.
they're not performing. They're processing. They're going through life.
Absolutely. And also, you can move them towards that performance level if they want to go there along that journey. And that's fine too, because there are, as we know, we're dealing with such a wide swing of people inside this container. You're going to have the dependent exerciser, you're going to have the independent exerciser, you're going to have the elite level exerciser, right? So you're going to have this wide swing. So who are you? It's just like you've taught me all along, Nora. Who are you looking at, and why are you programming this specific program for that body? Maybe they have retired and they've taken up pickleball and they're super excited about being the next pickleball champion of their area. Then you're probably going to want to focus on heading towards performance at some point in time, but not everyone, to your point, is of that mindset. And the other thing I want to mention too is that as we age, and I've seen this in family members and also in many of my clients, there becomes also a pride factor and they get nervous to tell you that something happened. So that's something that you also want to look for as an instructor, because over the age of 65, your increase in falls increases by 65%, and the majority of those falls are not told to their doctors, and the chance of them falling again after them having that one critical fall is very, very high. And so oftentimes your clients are not going to tell you that they have they were down at the beach or they were wherever and they tripped over a rock, or they were trying to pick up a bag and they tripped over a curb on their way into their car. So I don't say that to scare anyone, but this is also part of the aging process where we have to also negotiate the side of the brain where we do keep it as positive as possible so that we can keep them on the continuum of the learning journey, and also deal with if they have taken a fall, and focus more on fall prevention and reaction time.
Which I think gets us to something you just said really well that I just want to kind of underline, which is as people age, like I find, because most of my clients, I would say when I had my studio, were 45 and up. And I mean like 45 to 90, like that was kind of most of my clients at that point. And all of them had something, right? Whether it was a funky knee or a little bit of a weakness in the back or osteoporosis. I mean, things got progressively more, depending. But some of my clients who were older, it's like, I remember, one gal I had was 93 and she actually used to dance with Isadora Duncan. Isadora Duncan was like her aunt or something in Berkeley. And she could do anything. I mean, she was 92. She moved very slowly, like just everything took a different time, but she could do almost anything we want her to do. And then I had, again, of course, clients who are in their 60s who can't do anything or can do very little. And so it's also like, I almost feel like the range of potential in that client is wider. And you've really got to also explore and recognize their potential and then try to figure out from your point of what kind of aging they're doing. Is there a particular aspect of that aging that you want to focus on? Is it social aging? Like, hey, Alice, this is Georgia. Georgia lives in your same town, whatever it is, right? Or whether it's more like the psychological component where it's like, let's keep you walking. Why don't you go out every day if you're feeling gloomy? Like all those things. So how can you, again, recognize those elements that are maybe not working for them and try to give them homework or suggestions or a program that will help them along that path, individualized to their needs. Yeah.
Indeed, Nora, and to tag along with what you're saying, this is not the group that you are really introducing party tricks to. Like, and quite frankly, like this is not your backflip and your burpee group, and that's fine, because I have to tell you, the change that you can make, and I actually teach this a lot in a business capacity and also in a personal life capacity. And it rings true with this, especially with this population. Small actions and really kind of stacking those tasks and actions will eventually lead to big gains. So this is not your audience that you're going to be like, and now we're going to jump off a cliff and we're going to flip over 3 times. But the impact that you can make with these task-based exercises towards fall prevention, towards reaction time, towards neuroplasticity, towards social aging, it's super, super meaningful. And I always like to tell people, we're in the business of meaning. we're not looking for a product market fit. Our product market is a meaningful fit for our clients. And so the more that we can tailor these strategies and have these really nice, small, bite-sized chunks that they can chew off in their sessions with us, and that they don't have to swallow the elephant whole, is only going to make their sessions and their results even better as you go along the journey with them. So something to think about.
Yeah.
And for me, I kind of categorize, this will go into programming, and you guys can feel free to shut me up at any time, but I try and keep my programming simple, because I think that would be a question that people would want to know, like, well, how do you program? So I put four categories together in my head, and I try and make sure that I touch on all of them within any given session. So I call it my 4B, as in Brian, 4B programming system, and it's called brain, body, buddy, and what's my fourth B? Why am I losing it right now in my head? Brain, body, buddy, and balance. Sorry, balance. The big major one. So brain, body, buddy, and balance. So brain would be your neuroplasticity bucket. Body would be anything that's impacting your physiological age. So your strength and power, your getting up and getting down off the floor. Your balance is pretty self-explanatory. So anything that's impacting proprioception. And then buddy, if you can, and you can be that buddy if you're working in a one-on-one situation, just doing some simple, playful memory drills that will really help illuminate that playfulness of a session. And playfulness of movement also is a big hot topic these days, to get people to actually want to come back and move their bodies more.
Nice.
Awesome.
Nice. Yeah. I love the buddy part, especially because there are a lot of people out there who don't have that social component in their life. They have their spouse and that's about it. And maybe they have their kids and their life becomes very small. Something that one of my clients sort of brought up here in our studio, she was 85. But every time someone new came in, she would go over, introduce herself, start talking to them, make them her best friend. So that every time she came in, it was like, how are you? And she'd always remember everything about it. And like I say, this is an 85-year-old who is just the sweetest woman who just wanted to be friends with everybody. And it really made a huge difference. And everybody, to this day, she passed away over 12 years ago. I still have people telling me stories about her. So, I mean, she made a huge impact on the people that were here, and that makes a tremendous difference. And I remind my staff of that all the time. I said, look, I know you may be having a bad day, but everybody that walks in, you've got to be their friend. You've got, how are you? How you doing? How's so-and-so, whatever it is, because they want that cheers, effect. They want that everybody knows who they are and everybody feels they're special.
Absolutely. And also that's purpose, right? We were talking about purpose in social age. Purpose does not need to be, oh my gosh, I left this high level executive job and now I'm going to go into the chairman emeritus status and I'm still going to consult and do beep bop boop. That's fine if that happens. But think about your trajectories. Like I think about that from even my own personal standpoint. And I know, Nora, you can resonate with this, where it's like, things have changed dramatically for me over the last 3 years. And I'm definitely headed into the active aging category, which is coming up in the next year for me officially by the terminology that the American Council on Exercise defines it as. But for me, it's like, where is my purpose shifting and where am I headed? And am I really focused still on more, or do I want to stay in better? Like that's how I really keep my mindset. Why am I doing this? What's the point? What's the purpose? Does this satisfy my value system, or am I just adding this on because I'm adding this on? And so your purpose and your values can really start to come into play during this age category. And there's also, I think, a lot of feeling of insecurity and loss, and so even the smallest of things, like you said, Brian, your staff greeting someone and this woman wanting to be friends with other people, that's purpose, and that's really, really valuable.
Yeah,
I love that. So
I have I want to take a step back because we sort of got off it before I asked this question. And it's only because I've mentioned neuroaerobics to clients before. And the thing that they bring up is, oh, so that means I can do Sudoku while riding the stationary bike. So it's one of those things that's like, you know, the way I know it's the way I'm describing the concept to them that is not quite right. So I was like, you know what? Since I've got you here, I'm going to ask you to explain that. Does that help? Does that work? Or do they need a greater challenge?
Well, I mean, it depends on where they're at in their trajectory. Like maybe if they've only been sitting on their couch and doing Sudoku for the whole time, then adding the bike is going to add a task complexity that's going to illuminate some pathways in the brain. But I would say that you would want to eventually graduate from that specific task because, see, they're just going to be sagittal doing the same thing, right? So they are adding movement. But some of the apps that came out years ago, like Lumosity and those kinds of things, it's not that they're bad; they're great. They're great apps. Like, but the research is showing and suggesting that you really only get better at that given sort of game or that task when you're doing that. Exactly. So, like, do I want my mom to stop playing Words with Friends with me? No, of course I want. That's part of her joy. That's joyful for her. If they like playing Sudoku, you might be tackling something else with that. But if you really want to make neuronal impact, you want to increase the task complexity. And I'll give you guys some stats around the neuroplasticity timeline. So synaptic modification can actually happen within milliseconds. And then when you're starting to work with like branching out of the synapses and the dendrites, you're looking at several hours. New brain cells can start to form within several days. And then neuronal network changes take about weeks or months. And then really higher level brain changes, you're looking at months or years. And here's the thing is that it's one of those things where you have to practice, right? Yeah. So they're in this learning continuum. It's not like, oh, boom, I just did my neuroplasticity with Erika today at the studio. I'm good. I'm making those synaptic changes. It's going to make long-term brain changes. It has to be a part of a regular practice, which is what we know from a motor learning standpoint, that practice is major to moving you in towards a more performative standpoint. Same thing with neuroplasticity.
Awesome. Yeah.
I will say, be careful when you start to add in neurogenesis work, neuroaerobics, and neuroplasticity. I think I mentioned at the top of this, but what you will see and what you will get from your clients is you might get quite a bit of frustration in the beginning of introducing some of these things. Have you seen that, Brian?
I have. And that's why I will try and make it you pointed out something and I want to highlight it, make it fun. I don't want them to think that I'm trying to improve their memory or something like that, because as we get older, we all know we need that, but someone may not want that highlighted necessarily. So I will have them do a clock lunge and I'll say, okay, challenge time. And I'll tell them to do it in, 4 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2, whatever it is, or do it based on color for balance and things like that. That way it's trying to make it fun rather than making it a task oriented.
And also you are really in those moments in time. Like I said, there's so much happening and firing in the brain. Like for me, I tell myself no more than about 2.5 to 3 minutes per session of that type of work, because they're also having to really pay attention to other things that we're doing with them anyways. And particularly if we want to skew towards the Pilates side of things, where there can be too much language in that, where it's like, and now you're going to do this, and then you're going to externally rotate your hip, and you're going to, you're going to lift your chin, you're going to extend your thoracic spine, and you're going to do all these other things that you're pouring in this landscape of this one particular exercise. It's like, it's one of those moments where your clients just get overwhelmed and you just got to go, that's it for today. We'll work on it at another time. So
a very complex Simon Says sort of thing.
Yeah. I've done a lot of work, actually as an acupuncturist in my other job and massage therapist with people who had, more serious neurological issues and that kind of thing, strokes and that kind of stuff. And it was always really interesting because you could see what I call neurological fatigue. set in, and it's almost like they just shut
Yeah.
down. Like when you push that brain too hard, especially if there's trauma or post-stroke or whatever, man, it's like the blinds go down and nothing can go in. And it was always like, it took me a while with my first few clients to know, like, be able to sense we're getting close to that edge, and then to stop, back off, and move on to something else. And that took a little bit of time of really watching how they were responding, and knowing when, like, frustration was overcoming fun, or
Mm-hmm.
complexity was overcoming, like, their ability to really manage it, and figure out where that level was for them. That took just a bit of practice with each individual client. And then, maybe slowly building on that, but really keeping it pretty straightforward, and really trying to recognize when things were just, starting to get to be too much.
Yeah, I put that in the category of what I call my triple C, which I think Nora has heard me talk about before. I say comfort creates confidence. And so, whenever you're working in an environment where you're going to create more complex scenarios, that's fine, but always know that you need to pull that class or that person or that environment back to what I call my triple C. Comfort creates confidence, because you want them to come back to something that they know and that they love and that they can perform pretty well,
Yeah.
and that you can
Mm-hmm.
actually show to them, oh, look, remember Judy, when you came in 6 weeks ago, this leg and footwork was really too heavy for you, or you weren't able to perform this lunge or this squat very well, or look at the depth of your squat now. And that is that, again, it's that dopamine, it's that success. And so I always try and have a good bit of triple C in there, even if I'm headed towards some apex level or some higher level complexities throughout my programming, because that ultimately also ties back to success rate, to feeling
Yeah.
good in their body, for them to understand that wow, I really am making progress. And so that's always a part of my programming, and really in any age and in any session.
I think that neurologic exhaustion, first time I ever discovered that was a former boss of mine, was a world's strongest man competitor. And I'd be training in the same room that he did. He had a strongman room, and, I'd wander in there, and his workout would be 7 to 10 minutes, and then he's done.
Oh.
And I'd watch him, and he would give it 100. When you talk about 100%,
Yeah.
100%. And his name's Odd Haugen. He was a competitor years ago, and he was actually the oldest world's strongest man competitor. And I'd see him later, and I'd say, short workout today, huh? And he said, I couldn't do anymore. It wasn't productive anymore, because he gave 100% neurologically. He said, my neural system needed to recharge, not my physical. I could continue to do it, but I couldn't mentally. And that was sort of a moment for me to go, okay, aha. And I can see that with my older clients, the same thing can happen.
And this is where, Joseph Pilates said, don't do 10 mindful reps is 20 times more successful and more effective than 10 mindless reps, right? We all know that. And that's where, what I love too about this, the neuroaerobics, and even just involving any of the mental or cognitive component when you're doing something, is when somebody is having to do that and they're having to focus, everything gets amped up. I mean, I use the example a lot with this one client I had she could do anything and she could talk through anything. Like, I could have her doing super advanced full reformer workout and she could the whole time. And the only way I could get her to basically pay attention, because again, when I finally could get her nervous system to actually pay attention, I had to really, really challenge her at a really high level with rollers and unstable surfaces and complexity and multiple things, so she could actually pay attention. And that's, that's often what I'm aiming for, is like, how do I get you to actually focus? And again, it may not be for the whole session. There may be moments when they can just la, 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 but that focus moments. And that's really when I find a lot of the brain changes are happening, is when you've got some of that intensity and some of that focus, not for the whole hour, because that'll exhaust you, but make sure that there's a few moments of that really paying attention moment.
Nice. Oh, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, for sure. And you want to kind of couple some of these neuroplasticity, neuroaerobics tasks in a variety of different ways too. Like, you can do reaction time drills. Like, I teach a very simple drill called the hot cold drill. And you can really basically use anything in your moving environment. I oftentimes use a BOSU. You could have just a circular dot on the floor and make sure that it's not something that moves around, or a balance pad. And many of these things that you could do with these drills also, they build into a variety of different other things. Like, for instance, on hot cold, I basically have somebody's foot on top of, let's say, the BOSU at this point in time, and their foot can be down on the BOSU as long as I'm saying the word cold. But the minute I say the word hot, they have to lift their foot up off the BOSU or whatever they're using. And so I will do this as kind of a timed drill, and I will speed up my cadence as they improve. And that's a reaction time drill. But don't you think, obviously, it's also training what? Single leg balance, right? It's training, it's training gait, it's training a variety of different things. So just through that
responsiveness,
that more responsive reaction drill, I'm actually covering off on a whole host of things in that actual one exercise, which is awesome. So
love it.
It's awesome.
Yeah. The big things for us in this category: fall prevention and reaction time. So the more that you can really work on honing those types of exercises that support fall prevention, such as strengthening of the tibialis anterior, really strengthening the core muscles, the quadratus lumborum, all of the trunk muscles that help with catching themselves. I mean, you just think about yourself. You trip over a curb, or you stub your toe. What are you using to catch yourself? And the more that we can focus on that throughout the sessions, along with a good whole body programming sequence, the better.
I liked your 4Bs. I use that all the time. I actually take a tap dance class 3 times a week at this point, and almost everybody in the class a lot of them are over 60, some are over 70, and I would say brain. Actually, in that case, say brain, bones, balance. But and then the buddy piece too. But I also say bones, because for them it's also impact and osteoporosis prevention, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, I mean the fall prevention piece is a huge topic of conversation, because unfortunately the oxidization of the body, as we know, it gets harder and harder to get down and get up, and so we want to prevent the risk of falling as much as possible. And preventable falls, are again one of the leading issues in people going to their doctor's offices, being in emergency rooms, and those types of things. And a fall in the active aging category, it becomes so much more critical, and also degenerative, as far as like breaking a hip or being in the hospital long term. So
one of the things that a bunch of research showed was, essentially, if you're immobilized for a period of time, especially as an older person, they did this study, which, that a whole bunch of guys who are college age, and they basically put them in bed for 3 weeks, and they saw how long it took them to get back to their previous level of fitness. This was an old study, and it took them at least 3 months. So every week was like 4 weeks. Then they did the same group when they were in their 50s. So 30 years later, they did the same group, and many of them never recovered their previous level of fitness. Right. So, immobility is one of those things that we just want to minimize as much as we can.
I think about my mom, and she won't be mad if she actually hears this, so I can talk about her. But right prior to COVID, she actually shattered her ankle. She was a preventable fall, and she was going to somebody's house for, I think, a Bible study or something of that nature. And there was a hardwood floor, and it was a dark hardwood floor with a step down, and that was the same color, so she couldn't really see. She was holding something in her hands, and she fell, and she shattered that ankle. So she was in a non-weight bearing, immobile state in a wheelchair for close to a year, because she had to be non-weight bearing previous to the surgery for close to, I would say, almost 3 to 6 months. She then had to have that surgery and had many plates put in that ankle. And then she was in non-weight bearing until she could get through her physical therapy. And thankfully, yes, my mom does do Pilates twice a week. I am not her Pilates instructor, for good reason. And it's a joke, but it's not a joke. I love my mom dearly, but I don't need to be her Pilates instructor. We hire that service out for her. No problem. I am happy to do so. But, thankfully she had some good bone density and some good, muscle going into that. But even she's 84 years young now and she's doing great. But the recovery from that was really, it took her a
Really
very
long.
long time. And I can even still to this day see her just, the word that I'm looking for is like she has a little bit of, she's a little shy as far as her balance is concerned. You can tell that there's a little undercurrent of nervousness still, and she's really watching, because imagine a fall of that capacity and how badly it impacted her. And so I'm happy with where she's at, but we want to keep her going in the right direction.
Yeah.
All it takes sometimes is for one issue. I'm thinking of a gentleman who walked, no problem, totally mobile, 80 years old, probably 82 when this happened, fell on the stairs, but going up the stairs. He tripped, caught himself, but then psychologically lost it. He hurt himself enough that he was going to be in bed for a couple of days just because of his back, his knee, his hip. And then after that, he wouldn't get out of bed. And he was, this was the sweetest man you'd ever want to meet. And he would be yelling at anybody trying to help him because he was afraid of pain. And it took me actually to go over there and, I hate to say this, yell back a little bit, because he trusted me. And, I said, you're only allowed to yell at me if I hurt you. And he was like, oh, okay. Because he was afraid of being hurt.
Yeah.
It was fear. Yeah. And when we got him back to walking, he never walked without a walker the rest of his life.
Yeah.
And before that, he had no problems. So there's a lot of psychological component to that. And like you said, the immobilization, it doesn't take that long. It doesn't take that long. So yeah, they're pretty fragile at that state, or they can be. Yeah. Some people are.
But bringing it back to the joy piece, the cool thing is that I think that we can make such a significant impact on this population. It's that small actions to big gains piece that I always try and remind myself of, and just, habit stacking, movement stacking, and just really showing them what they can do in their life and help them live as long as possible in that independent exerciser category.
Yep.
Yeah, as you're talking, I was just thinking about all the clients I've had who, regardless of what state they came in with, like to see how their personalities shifted over time. Like some of my clients came in, they're really prickly or very defensive, and just like everything smooths out, whether they're old, whether they're young, whatever the situation is. And what we do is it just makes such a difference in their lives. Having somewhere they're safe, they're successful, they get to move, they get to, have their buddies going. It's really awesome. So, Erika, thank you. There's a lot of practical tips in there. There's a lot of little gems in terms of things to start playing with clients. A lot of really good inspiration for me. I loved your perspective. I learned a whole bunch, which is what I'm always interested in.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I took copious amounts of notes. I was jotting things down. So I love that.
Well, I have an arsenal in my toolbox of active aging strategies on all of the 4Bs, and it's just a joy and an honor to be on your podcast and just start the conversation, because this is an ever-growing population. This is, if not it, they will be your most loyal, most valuable clients. When I had my studio, it was 80% of my population was in the 50 plus set. And like I said, they're a beautiful heterogeneous group they just want to live life well, and they want to do life better for as long as possible. And we can bring them great success and joy in doing that.
Now,
awesome.
Erika, is there anything you would like to promote? Anything where can we find you? Where can people see you?
I'm the founder of Level Up Movement. You can find loads of content on Level Up Movement, including Nora and Brian, who just did a great clastermind. Let me define clastermind. A clastermind is a fandangled word that I pulled out of my rabbit hat a few years ago, which it's kind of a small mini workshop. It's about 90 minutes. It can be a little bit of a combination of a class, but it's also some lecture at times. It's a variety of different things. And you can find some of my work up there. I did a whole neuroaerobics in the Pilates environment Clastermind in November. There's actually a bunch of active aging on there. Valentine has an active aging one. She's doing another one coming up. So we have a good battery of resources in that, in the healthy aging, active aging world. And there's just a whole bunch of other great things. So go and check out Level Up Movement, and that's MVMT, so levelupmvmt.com. If you're an instructor or you want some inspiration on a variety of different topics and different speakers. And then you can find me on the road. So,
and we'll put all of those things in the show notes, so you can reach out to Erika personally or follow her on Instagram at Erika Quest, with K for Erika and Quest as in just going on a quest.
Yes, going on a quest.
Going on a quest, as we all are. This
fortunately or unfortunately, a very hard name to forget.
Yep.
And then you add on the hair, and then it's all over. So
it's your trademark. It's your trademark.
I know.
Well,
thanks you guys for having me.
We really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
You.
And
well, it's an honor and a pleasure to know both of you guys. And I want to just say that you're doing wonderful things with Moving Conversations as well. So congratulations to the both of you. And I hope that our movement, Pilates, and fitness community just continues to open their ears and listen to all of these.
Well, thank you very much. I'm gonna trim that, and that's gonna be a nice little promo for us. So, Moving Conversations, you can always reach out to us on Gmail. movingconvos@gmail.com is the best way to get in touch with us if you have any questions, or if you have something that you want us to cover, or if you have a guest idea, we'd love to hear them. So reach out, let us know. We're on Instagram, Moving Convos, Facebook, Moving Conversations. And for Nora St. John and for Erika Quest, I'm Brian Ritchie. We will see you next time.
Thanks, guys.